What's going on, guys? This is going to be another long formatted video. I'm going to be talking about strictly the Rocky franchise, my favorite franchise of all time. So let's get started with Rocky 1. Before I dive into the ins and the outs of these films, let me give you a bit of insight from my love for these films. If you don't want to hear me ramble about this or the upcoming behind the scenes nuggets that I found, skip to this timestamp. Hopefully I remember to edit it in, but without further ado, here we go. Growing up, I didn't come from the richest family. We weren't poor, but I had what I needed, and that's just it. I had what I needed. At my dad's house, I grew up in a split home, of course. I had an old treasure chest looking television that you could walk up to and turn the dial to change the channel, and I had about 12 channels altogether. But with that television, I had a VHS player. I don't have many VHS tapes, but I did have A Bronx Tale, which is my second favorite movie of all time, as well as Rocky 1 through 5. Growing up a film fan, all I wanted to do was watch Rocky. I'd live, sleep, and eat Rocky, constantly rewatching these films over and over and over again. I would wake up every day and watch them, go eat, come back and watch them, take a shower, come back and watch them, go to the bathroom, come back and watch them. You get the point. It was basically my personality to the point a lot of people around the area knew me as the Rocky guy. I have probably seen these 5 films more times than anyone's going to the bathroom in their life, and that's not even a joke. It was sick at one point. I can recite these 5 films word for word without a hiccup. It's quite crazy. Watching these films nowadays, I still tear up nearly every single time I watch them because they're so near and dear to my heart. They got me through a lot of tough times, not just as a kid, but also as an adult. Now, without further ado, with my speech out of the way, let's start talking about Rocky. There is more to this film than just a great story with great writing and amazing characters. It comes with a lot of behind-the-scenes baggage. As we all probably know by now, Sylvester Stallone is the creator and the writer of this film, but it wasn't as easy as sitting down and jotting down ideas. Sly goes through some of the most brutal challenges a person can go through to get this film onto the big screen. In his younger days, Sly was broke and homeless looking for a shot. He came up with the idea of Rocky and knew he struck gold. He was able to construct meetings with meaningful studios, which a lot of them were interested in the film, but there was one caveat. Sly wanted to be the star in the film, but the studio had other ideas. Some of these studios offered him hundreds of thousands of dollars, which in today's time is damn near $1 million for the script without Sly in the picture. But Stallone didn't want to give up the rights to it. He was determined to play this role and bring his work of art to life. Stallone was so down at one point, he had to sell the one thing that meant everything to him, his dog, just so he can finally eat. Finally, United Artists Studios was able to grant him his wish of playing the character of Rocky, so Stallone accepted the deal and went off and bought his dog for nearly 10 times the amount of money he sold him for. It's a very, very lovely story. A few nuggets of information I also found was Stallone was in the crowd, or at least heard about the Muhammad Ali-Chuck Wepner fight, and that's what struck the inspiration for the movie Rocky. A lot of people either think this film comes from either nothing or is about Rocky Marciano, considering the name Rocky, as he's shown and mentioned in the film a few times as well, but it's loosely based off the Ali-Chuck Wepner fight. A few more pieces that I found was that Rocky's extras were completely improvised, like when he was running in the third act and the street salesman threw him an orange, they didn't know they were in a movie, so it just worked out perfectly well. The last piece, before I lose you all, when Rocky notices the poster was wrong and called out Mr. Jurgensen about it, the poster was actually wrong by the props director, so Sly improvised that line, as well as the line being about his robe being too baggy, because the prop director, again, messed up and made the robe 9 times too large. How do you screw up that bad? Now, with the background out of the way, let's dive into the story. Not just to me, Rocky is one of the most celebrated films of all time. It holds its value tremendously, as well as holding its rewatch value, feeling like a complete film, which is one of the better aspects of the film. Although this film has an amazing story with such grounding messages to latch onto, it's more of a character study at the end of the day. At its core, we all know Rocky as a boxing movie, but the boxing could be seen as a mere subplot because of all the groundbreaking and moving character development, particularly the love story between Rocky and Adrian, Talia Shire. This film conveys powerful messages such as that competing isn't always about winning, but about proving to oneself. It also emphasizes that the size, strength, or intelligence aren't prerequisites of success. Hard work and dedication can accomplish anything. Moreover, it teaches the importance of getting back up after setbacks. Because of all these messages, this film is extremely relatable to anybody on this planet. The plot at face value may not make much sense or be realistic with an underground no-name boxer getting a chance at the heavyweight title, but it works to help establish all these beautiful messages. As a narrative, it's very tight and cohesive, where everything lines up with each other, including countless, and I mean countless great scenes to where it's almost impossible to choose which one's the best. You got the "I want to know how it come" scene between Rocky and Mickey, Rocky and Adrian on their first date, Rocky talking about going the distance, the actual boxing match, but to me, perhaps the best scene is when Mickey comes to talk about Rocky about being his manager. It is incredibly moving and showcases Sylvester Stallone's great acting prowess. The final part of the narrative that I found particularly noteworthy is how it highlights the life of a fighter. They highlighted the mental challenges they face, the physical training and what it does to your body, the distractions caused by external noises, and the actual fight itself. Stallone and John G. Avildsen were truly attuned to the essence of the sport. From a character perspective, this film is one of the few that gave birth to that authentic underdog story. Although it may or may not have been the first film to do it, it certainly popularized the message and resonated with everyone and made it relatable. Rocky is an unorthodox fighter, but he's also an unorthodox protagonist, bringing a lot of heart and realism to the character. It's so easy to root for him because he's a well-developed and multifaceted character. He's a down-on-his-luck boxer working a dead-end job as a leg breaker while also fighting for scraps on the side. However, he fights for such little because he loves it and believes he's only good at that one thing. Rocky wants to be more than a product of his environment, although he fully embodies that style, but to contrast with that, he is truly a gentle, kind, and nice man that passes wisdom to anyone that will listen. To contrast with that tough exterior, Rocky's a compassionate and caring individual who wants to help others and do what's right. Unlike the typical hard-nosed boxer style, he's not a big, burly, tough guy. He generally wants to make a positive difference. Sylvester Stallone's raw actor brings a grounding element to the character, making him easy to connect with. He's extremely charming and funny, having so many memorable lines, but with him being so goofy at times, he still truly shines as a great actor in most moments. It really comes down to the little things that really enhance his character to new heights. His demeanor, his mannerisms, his dialect, and his swagger all contribute to his portrayal, which also doubles for a down-and-out boxer. They very easily could have casted an Oscar-worthy talent, but this one truly would not have been as good or even the same without him, where, for me, Sly is one of few actors that truly trademarks this role. We've seen reincarnations of iconic characters like Spider-Man, the Joker, and James Bond, but nobody can fill the shoes of Sylvester Stallone as Rocky. This film is great because of Sly, but he definitely couldn't do it on his own, and that comes from the help from a fantastic supporting cast from Talia Shire, Burt Young, Burgess Meredith, Carl Weathers, and many more. The creators do such a great job blending and balancing all these characters perfectly to complement Rocky. Adrian, another key part to the film's success, is portrayed as a quiet, reserved individual, yet she possesses a profound love, charisma, supportiveness, and wit. She embodies all the qualities one would desire in a love interest, although their relationship is anything but ordinary. This film almost doubles as a love story, which I kind of see it as a Valentine's Day movie in some lights, highlighting the depth and emotional connection between Rocky and Adrian. After the boxing match concludes, you don't even care about the result. You just want to see where she is, how she is, and where these two are going to end up, which also builds into one of the best moments of the film. The creators massively weave a bond between Rocky and Adrian, creating a truly beautiful and natural connection. They accept each other for who they are, providing unwavering support regardless of their differences, no matter what. Their chemistry is just effortless, even considering their polar opposite personalities. Watching them interact evokes a sense of joy and rooting for their success. Ultimately, their relationship brings out the best in each other, showcasing their individual growth as well as their growth as a couple. Burt Young's portrayal as Paulie is equally noteworthy, although his character can easily be misconstrued. While Paulie is undoubtedly a loser, alcoholic, aggressive, and persistent, he plays a crucial role in bringing Rocky and Adrian together, complementing both characters really well. He serves as this almost mediator, bridging the gap between them. However, this character goes beyond this role. He is Rocky's best friend, although he isn't too friendly, of course, and Adrian's brother, which adds depth to the character. Despite being rough around all edges, marked by jealousy and selfishness, there's a reason behind his behavior. He feels constantly mistreated and disrespected by the people around him, feeling as if he's constantly been dealt a bad hand in life, feeling like he's been kicked around by the people around him. Another well-established character is Burgess Meredith as Mickey. In short, he perfectly embodies an old-school boxing trainer. He's harsh, he's blunt, but he knows how to motivate his fighters and cares deeply for them, as evident in the scene where he offers his management services to Rocky. He shares such a great dynamic with Rocky that only gets better as the franchise goes on. Carl Weathers as Apollo Creed is another notable character. While he's well received by the Rocky fan base, he almost gets sidelined a bit because the film isn't solely about the boxing. However, they effectively portray his overconfidence and disregard for Rocky. As mentioned, this is meant to be a loose interpretation of Muhammad Ali, and Carl Weathers delivers an exceptional performance, dare I say, even surpassing Will Smith's portrayal in Ali, which is intended to be a direct representation. Now, let's move on to the script, and to me, it's even richer than all the money this film has made. Sylvester Stallone's writing infuses the film with so much heart, especially with him at the helm knowing exactly what it needs and how these lines need to be presented. Perhaps my bias stems from repeated viewings, but the film is incredibly memorable and quotable, particularly the Rocky character. It's witty and quick-minded, but not in a loud manner, as the humor is delivered very dryly. Stallone massively conveys these messages and scenes through gripping dialogue and visual cues, making this a timeless classic. Another remarkable and significant achievement of this film is its cinematography, which earned this prestigious award for Best Picture. The film's visual style is intentionally raw and grainy, yet effectively immerses the audience in the action. The environment and the color palette play a crucial role in setting the tone, creating a gritty and authentic atmosphere. The film's unique shooting and editing techniques, which also won an award, contribute to its distinctive personality. The box sequence stands out as a visual masterpiece. Instead of relying solely on reverse shots of the boxers looking and throwing punches, the cinematography employs a variety of angles, including ringside views from underneath the ropes, wide takes of the action, close-ups capturing the blood and the sweat, shots of the corners in the crowd, and even real-time footage of a live boxing crowd. These diverse shots create a breathtaking and an immersive experience. The cinematography also effectively portrays the rundown appearance of Philadelphia, the gym, and the housing, enhancing the film's grime and oppressive tone through the use of muted and gloomy colors. Moving back to the boxing itself, the action is nothing short of tremendous. Although the actual boxing may seem limited, the filmmakers managed to achieve an incredible level of intensity and authenticity in such a short span of time. The boxing matches are portrayed as violent yet controlled, capturing the essence of a true boxing bout. The choreography of the action scenes is impeccable, as well as the memorable training sequences, which had become synonymous with the film, further enhancing its impact. The score and the soundtrack play a pivotal role in elevating the film's emotional impact, especially during the action. The piano score, which often accompanies the saddened moments, is complemented by the well-known trumpet score, which adds a sense of excitement and anticipation. The music effectively stirs the emotions and motivates the audience to embark on their own training journeys, which, who watches Rocky and doesn't want to go out and train after? It's magnificent. As for my negatives, I don't have any. This film is perfect. Now, if I'm being completely transparent, you can nitpick tiny things, like maybe some dislikes with certain characters and their acting, or some technical errors here and there, like between round 11 and 12, where they squirt the blood on his face. I thought that was funny how they didn't cut that out. But all of it gets washed away if you're able to soak yourself into this masterpiece of a film. So because I'm such a Rocky nerd, where I believe I'm pound for pound the biggest Rocky fan on the planet, I want to dive into some of the cool nuggets of information like I did in the last review. So if you don't want to be bored with that again, skip to this timestamp. The first nugget comes from Sly being in the director's chair. To most, including myself, I was a bit surprised to come to realize that Sly was picked to direct this film, not only because he stars in it, but because of his lack of experience behind and in front of the camera. It's sort of funny because just how he had a campaign for the studio to take on his first project, he formulated a similar game plan to the producers and studios on board to allow him to direct this film. With him coming off his first directorial film in Paradise Alley, it didn't really seem like he was the best choice because that film really didn't do all the greatest. But because of his drive and passion for this role in this story, basically it being his baby, he was able to get everyone on board to allow him to direct this film, and if I'm honest, I think he did a pretty good job with all things considered. The next interesting nugget is the amount of rewrites this film went through. There are a couple of things that weren't planned in the original script, like Rocky switching from Southpaw to Orthodox, as well as Talia Shire not being present at the final fight. Stallone actually tore his pectoral muscle, needing to get surgery on it, so to enable him to do the boxing scenes, they implemented him going Orthodox to take some strain off of that left shoulder. I thought that was pretty cool. As far as Talia goes, she was doing another movie at the time. I'm just not exactly sure what it was. I don't think it was Godfather Part 2. Regardless, as well as doing this one, so she had a limited time to shoot towards the end of this film, so they rewrote it as the doctor said that she wasn't healthy enough to go to the fight, and if I'm honest, that truly worked out for the better, because we got one of the best Rocky moments of the entire franchise with the "Adrian, I did it" speech. Alright, now my little nerd speech aside, let's dive into the film. When it comes to Stallone's direction, it may not be as visually striking as John G. Avildsen's work, but he managed to capture a remarkably similar tone and style. Stallone infused some of the shots with a distinct personality reminiscent of Avildsen's approach. While certain sequences appeared conventional, there were many exceptional camera suggestions aimed at evoking specific emotions. For instance, the quiet shot of Rocky sweeping out the boxing ring after everyone leaves symbolizes his feelings of loneliness and despair. Another notable example is the close-up shot of Adrian standing on the stairs pregnant. She doesn't say anything, but her face and demeanor conveys her betrayal and disappointment in Rocky's decision to go against her wishes and continue to box. While it was unlikely that this film would secure another Oscar for Best Picture, I believe Stallone demonstrated exceptional competence behind the camera. With the story, as we all know, this is a direct sequel to the first film, which started a trend for the first 5 films, transforming it into an anthology series. I'm glad they decided not to make this a part 1 and part 2, as watching a nearly 4-hour boxing film could be quite daunting. However, they could have easily slapped on part 1 and part 2 on the titles, and no one would have blinked an eye, because it does such a great job of playing off everything from the first film. While this one beautifully plays off of the first installment, this very much still feels like its own movie with its natural progression. Like the first film, it still feels like a character study as to why it works so well, but it equally does a good job of making a story-driven film as well, where all the subplots play into the characters and their progression. Now, that's not to say the first film didn't have any stakes, but it certainly felt safer because Rocky essentially had nothing to lose. However, in this film, they certainly upped the ante and incorporated more stakes, including Rocky's health being at risk, their financial troubles, and Adrian being pregnant and facing significant complications. This film moves at a blink of an eye, so if you look away for even a moment, you easily could miss something. Despite its speed, it does an amazing job of creating a very cohesive and tightly woven narrative. As for the characters, they all felt a lot more relaxed this time around, but not in a way that didn't care. Not like they were tight or confined in the last film, but simply coming off of one film, these actors and actresses felt more comfortable in their roles. They all received decent to great character development, which made us even more interested in their journey, especially from Rocky and Adrian's characters. Rocky goes through a lot of self-discovery and almost a complete rebranding of himself. Adrian, on the other hand, gets more to do this time around as well, becoming even more of a safe space for Rocky and trying to build a family for them. It's truly beautiful. As for Rocky, sure, he may be simple-minded, but he certainly becomes more mature in this role. He's willing to put his wants aside to build a family with Adrian and support his family in the best way possible. He always tried to do right by them, almost feeling like he got a second chance at life in a way. I thought it was really fun watching him become more mature and family-oriented, rather than being just a dumbbell. However, he still has that poor kid mentality, getting overly excited over little things that he couldn't do or afford before. Like I just mentioned before, in a way, it almost feels like a brand new character while still having the same foundation. However, with his maturity, Rocky faces a lot of harsh realities of life and is forced to make decisions that only enhance his great character development. As for Sylvester Stallone as an actor, he may not be everyone's cup of tea outside of his Rocky character, but to me, I think he's pretty dang good. He's not Tom Cruise or Harrison Ford, but Stallone in this role, he may as well be. He's very charming and charismatic where he needs to be, as well as selling these emotional and dramatic beats very well. As for Talia Shire as Adrian, she gets a lot of color this time around as well. She's able to flex her brain power and try to help lead and guide Rocky to the right decisions, trying to keep him grounded and safe. The creators, particularly Stallone, excel in developing Adrian's character, creating a safe haven for Rocky and amplifying the sense of unwavering support. Subtle cues reveal this dynamic. For instance, when their relationship falters, Rocky's personal and professional life suffers, leading him into a slump. Conversely, during the strong moments, all he needs is her presence to unleash his full potential. Their bond stands as one of cinema's finest, a joy to witness due to the numerous heartwarming and sentimental moments they share. Another standout character is Burgess Meredith as Mickey. In my opinion, his best moment comes in Rocky 1. However, in this film, he dominates the screen, showcasing his incredible dynamic between them. They really enhance those moments of Mickey giving Rocky the business, delivering that tough love, while also weaving in sentimental moments that demonstrate his unwavering loyalty, similar to the Adrian character. Lastly, I want to highlight Carl Weathers as Apollo Creed, who plays more of a prominent role this time around. A solo revenge story unfolds in his life, where he seeks to prove that Rocky's victory in the first film was merely a fluke, hence the Southpaw jinx. In the first movie, Apollo was the epitome of popularity. However, this time, the roles of Rocky and Apollo almost get reversed in a way, with Apollo facing criticism and ridicule. To navigate this challenge, he basically kind of resorts to rage-baiting Rocky into a rematch, attempting to silence the noise. This echoes Muhammad Ali's persona in the film, evident in his trash talk and his ring style. When it comes to the writing, this film is just as sharp as the last installment. Sylvester Stallone does an excellent job of balancing the differing tones, ranging from drama to comedy, and incorporating numerous emotional beats. Rocky simply wouldn't be Rocky without his dry sense of humor and laughs throughout the film, which is very present here and works just as well as the first movie. However, this film truly resonates with its dramatic and emotional moments, particularly regarding family, loss, and sacrifices. As for the boxing and training sequences, in some respects, they were maybe better than the last one. Some may argue that the training in this film is superior, not only because it's more extensive, but also because of the dramatic setup from the hospital scene. These training sequences effectively embody the Rocky theme, showcasing his hard-nosed work ethic, community involvement, and fighting for his family, as well as the beautiful score. Once again, the score is well utilized, similar to the first film, but with a slight variation. While the first film featured a beautiful piano score for the somber moments and trumpets for the high moments, this film incorporates drums as well as the trumpets, adding a touch of life and motivation to these scenes. When it comes to the actual boxing scenes, to me, they were more action-packed and arguably even better in terms of shot selection, making you feel as if you were right there in the ring. Stallone effectively captures Apollo Creed's hatred and determination, making him a more formidable opponent this time around. These scenes are extremely entertaining and unpredictable due to the frequent shifts in momentum and the climactic closing round. As for my criticisms, I really only have a few. My first nitpick is with some of the comedy. Now, I genuinely appreciate how Sly has fully developed this character, which essentially launched his career, and essentially, it's his baby. However, this film can sometimes feel a bit forced with its humor. The comedy in the previous film felt very natural, but in this one, it feels like they try to add more humor, which works well in some instances, but sometimes it comes across as excessive and forced. My second concern is primarily with the technical aspects of the film. As I mentioned, it's very fast-paced, so sometimes the editing can be quite choppy. Things move from one thing to the next very quickly, as if they were trying to cram in as many ideas as possible. Lastly, I have an issue with the post-production additions, such as like the ADR. Sometimes the ADR doesn't quite match up with the actors' mouths, and it can be quite noticeable on a few occasions. Additionally, the sound effects are effective, but sometimes they feel a bit too over the top and dramatic. Overall, like I said at the top of the video, Rocky 2 is a damn near perfect direct sequel. I absolutely adore this film, where it always gets the emotions going. So as I've been doing in my last two reviews, I'm going to start off by nerding out on some of the behind the scene antics that took place. So again, if you don't want to hear me yap, skip to this timestamp. For starters, Sylvester Stallone is an absolute unit in this film. Not to say he didn't care about his other roles outside of the Rocky trilogy at this point, but you can tell that this is his baby. He cares so much about this franchise to the point he took his body to the absolute breaking point to get into shape for this role. To start off, Stallone got slight reconstruction surgery on his face so his eye wouldn't be as droopy as it was, along with, I believe he had something to do with his mouth so he doesn't talk out of the side of his mouth as much. And even in the film, Paulie makes a comment about it when Rocky bails him out of jail, so I found that to be a pretty cool nugget of information. Secondly, as mentioned, Sly took his body to the absolute breaking point, cutting down to 2.8% body fat for this film, where his diet consisted of 10 egg whites and a single piece of toast a day, with the addition of a fruit every third day of the week. When it comes to his actual training, he would do a few mile jog in the morning along with 2 hours of weight training, then go off and do 18 rounds of sparring, and to cap it off, go off and do another lift with the inclusion of swimming. The next nugget of information that I found that was quite interesting pertained to Hulk Hogan. Vince McMahon actually fired Hogan from the WWF because he took this role, but 2 years later he got re-signed due to him being such a big star back in the day in the WWF. And the last piece of information that I found pretty interesting and became a trend later on in the Rocky franchise, Stallone told Mr. T to actually hit him as hard as he could during the audition. I really don't understand the significance in that, but I always found that to be funny that Sly got so engrossed in this role that he actually thought he was a fighter and could take a proper smack. This really intensifies in Rocky 4, but you'll have to wait to the next video to hear about that story. Now, with that out of the way, let's dive into Rocky 3. To me anyways, Rocky 3 stands as the epitome of a true revenge story, particularly in the realm of a sports film. It goes beyond the conventional revenge narrative, where a character reaches their peaks, falls hard, and then rises again. Instead, it delves into multiple layers, including proving to oneself once more that they can achieve greatness with the introduction of new challenges. The film also boasts compelling dramatic moments due to the profound relationship between Rocky and Mickey, and Rocky and Adrian as well as Rocky's work ethic metaphorically going into the dirt and rising back up, symbolized by Rocky being civilized, as they say in the movie. Rocky 3 somewhat deviates from the traditional Rocky theme of a character study format. While it undoubtedly provides great character development from Rocky and others, it also explores the broader narrative of a self-discovery and delivers a satisfying sports story. Now, some people do dismiss this film as cheesy or even a product of its own time, which is understandable to an extent. However, I find it grounded due to the filmmaker's skillful handling of the differing tones and their seamless integration. It retains the Rocky charm, if you will, while delivering emotionally resonant moments to make it arguably the most emotionally impacted film in the franchise. While some may find the wrestling scene with Hulk Hogan silly, it serves as a poignant reflection of Rocky's state at that moment and the shift in his mindset. The film's exposition is handled exceptionally well, contrasting with Rocky 2's prolonged opening set and the somewhat drawn-out first act. In contrast, Rocky 3 compresses the opening set, presenting it more as a highlight scene, followed by a subsequent scene that showcases Rocky's career trajectory, complemented by the inclusion of news articles that highlight his growth and popularity. This could have easily been mishandled, leading into filler scenes of Rocky doing commercials and whatnot, and prolonging the runtime. However, the montage style that they employed was incredibly effective for me. The final piece of the story that I truly appreciated was its seamless integration with the first two films, yet it felt like its own distinct new film. Moreover, it concluded in a new satisfying manner. If this were to be the final Rocky film, it would feel like a complete trilogy concluding in a perfect way. As for the character development, Sly, of course, shines bright as Rocky. He receives a lot of new layers to his character, which is commendable. Usually in a franchise's third film, what can be done is usually already established, unless they venture into unexplored territory that hasn't even been hinted at yet. For instance, I love the Rush Hour trilogy, and especially the third film, but neither character gets any significant characterization, and they introduce Lee's brother out of nowhere. It feels like a weak attempt to keep the franchise alive, but in this film, Rocky continues to evolve, making it a worthwhile investment. They effectively showcase Rocky's well-earned success, but when they peel back the layers, it seems like that his characterization was somewhat manufactured, along with his work ethic diminishing, leading him into self-discovery. As long as you enjoy the Rocky character, this should resonate with you. One criticism of the film is how Rocky transitions from being a dumbbell to seemingly being more educated with his words and becoming more grounded and vulnerable. However, at his core, he remains the same character with the signature humor and witty phrases. I appreciate this take because it raises the question of how much of the initial character style can be sustained before it becomes overused. Moving on to Adrian, she does somewhat get sidelined in this film, where her relationship with Rocky isn't as prominent throughout the entire runtime as it was in the first two installments. Nevertheless, she still receives great characterization, showcasing his role as a safe haven for Rocky and her ability to penetrate his defenses and connect with him on a deeper level. In my opinion, she is the most captivating scene in the entire film, the beach scene, which also gives me goosebumps regardless of how many times I've seen the film. It's truly a riveting scene. Burgess Meredith delivers a significant performance as Mickey in this installment as well. While we all know what happens and how his screen time is limited, his role is crucial in the shaping of the film's trajectory. Outside of the beach scene, his fate is the most impactful moment of the film, evoking tears in me every single trip. This pivotal scene sets the tone for the rest of the movie, which shifts from the lightheartedness of the first act to a more dramatic tone that I genuinely appreciated. While Paulie still provides laughs here and there, the scenes take a dramatic turn, leaving viewers on the edge of their seats at all times. Carl Weathers returns as Apollo Creed, who plays a pivotal role in this film as well, arguably being even more significant than in the first two installments, which is crazy to say because he's the main antagonist in the first two films. Their portrayal of his character is commendable, as they avoid stepping on Mickey's toes while still maintaining the iconic Mickey and Rocky bond in a new, fresh way. Their dynamic is exceptionally well crafted, and for the first time, viewers are likely to be pleasantly surprised by how they crafted it. They go through countless trials and tribulations and trials and errors while hunting for the result they're comfortable with, which makes for some of the best scenes of the film. Paulie, on the other hand, can be a problematic character, but in a peculiar way, he complements everyone around him. When everyone is pleasant and happy, he disrupts the harmony and becomes polarizing. Conversely, when everyone is focused, he bursts out with a joke, always doing something different from the crowd. This is precisely why I enjoy his character. The subtle layers they add to his character is also noteworthy. While they don't really introduce anything new, they highlight his lingering shadow over Rocky and his sour attitude coupled with his alcoholism. Despite his prickly nature, he remains Rocky's best friend, although he isn't too friendly, as Rocky says. Mr. T's portrayal as Clubber Lang is widely regarded as Rocky's greatest antagonist, and I can certainly agree with that sentiment on certain days. He's incredibly intense and hard-nosed, similar to how Apollo was in the second film, but he managed to elevate it a few notches, becoming extremely menacing and a brutal bruiser-style boxer. Apollo is a tactician who is skilled with his words, while Clubber is shorter with his words, but more stern in being a flat-footed, heavy-handed boxer. Now, when you call a spade, Mr. T isn't really the most talented actor, but in this film, he essentially portrays a heightened version of himself. If I'm being honest, this is probably his best role in his filmography, next to his role in the A-Team, which significantly launched his career in many respects. I also found it pretty cool that Sly basically gave him complete freedom to add his own color and charisma to the character, and it pays off really well. At his core, he's the ultimate bad guy that shows up at Rocky's every turn for the first half of the film until he gets what he wants. When it comes to the script, it's true that it may not be the strongest of the first three films. The first two are packed with numerous Rockyisms, if you will, and memorable lines, but this film certainly has its moments. The script allowed for many great character moments between all the characters, while still including many memorable lines from all the characters as well. Rocky, of course, has his moments. Apollo has the iconic "There is no tomorrow" line. Clubber Lang has the "pain" or "dead meat" line. Adrian has the beach scene. Paulie has his occasional gags, so everyone had a chance to shine. Speaking of memorable lines, in my opinion, Rocky III also had some of the best motivational moments, whether it was Apollo's "There is no tomorrow" line, or Rocky's "Nothing is real if you don't believe in who you are," or Adrian's scene at the beach. As far as the training and the boxing sequences go, this one was arguably the best it's been for my money. As I mentioned, it's more about the boxing than the first two films, so they incorporate more boxing sequences and numerous training montages. The first two films definitely embodied the sense of old school training, but this film had its unique, hard-nosed training style. From the workouts they did, to the design of the grimy, rundown gym, everything about it was reminiscent of old school training. The boxing sequences between Rocky and Clubber are arguably the most brutal between all three films. Clubber just wants to go out there and hurt people. He's never been in the distance before for a reason while being undefeated. Although the two fights don't go on for too long, they're some of the most entertaining because of the momentum shifts and the tactics that go on, as well as how they're choreographed. To enhance these scenes and sequences, I'd be remiss not to mention the score and the lovely soundtrack. When people think of Rocky, outside of the score, everyone always wants to bring up Survivor's Eye of the Tiger. That song truly gets the blood flowing and elevates these sequences extremely well. Without this song, this film would not be the same. Sly initially wanted to go with Queen's Another One Bites the Dust, but there was rumors that it was too expensive or the lead singer didn't want to be involved in the franchise. Then it was supposed to be Joe Esposito's You're the Best Around, but that fell through the cracks and was implemented in The Karate Kid, so Sly fell on the Eye of the Tiger. Now, every time anyone hears that tune, they always think of Rocky. In my opinion, without Rocky III, that melody would not be as popular as it is. Now, although I love this film, I definitely have my criticisms, and most of them stem from the characters and the technical aspects of the film. Regarding my character flaws, as I hinted at earlier, Rocky undergoes a significant transformation from a simple-minded individual to a rather intelligent one. While I personally can overlook this change, it's a substantial shift that could potentially alienate some viewers, as the appeal of Rocky lies in its unique characterization. Another issue I have, which I also give a bit of a pass to, is with Clubber Lang. His character lacks depth, and his motivations are primarily driven by a desire to become the champion. While this works for the film, I believe that some additional characterization would have enhanced his portrayal. Now my next issue, I'm not sure if this was a sound issue or simply a delivery problem, but there are several instances where the dialogue is difficult to understand. Burgess Meredith's delivery is certainly distinctive, but there are some times where his words are unclear. Also, some of Mr. T's lines are particularly problematic, and of course Sly as well for obvious reasons. This brings me into my next issue, which is the ADR and post-production sound, similar to what put a damper on Rocky 2. There are instances where the dialogue and the actors' mouths don't really match up, and the post-production sound effects can make certain situations feel very overdramatic. In my last issue, which plays no harm to the film or the film's score, but being a fight fan, I had an issue with the game plan that Apollo talks about with Duke. When you're fighting a heavy-handed guy that hasn't been tested by the distance, trying to take the fight to him and banking on getting him out of there in 7-8 rounds isn't quite the smartest, especially when you have a guy like Rocky who has a granite chin and great cardio. Sure, Rocky isn't a tactician with pretty footwork or a brilliant jab, but I would think that he would try to tire out Clubber early, make him swing, make him miss, make him chase, and then come round 7-ish, take it to him. I guess in a sense that's what Rocky did, but he did it on his own merit. I don't know if that was a subtle nod to Mickey's initial game plan, because that's what Mickey had told Rocky before the first fight, but nevertheless, the job got done. Overall, I absolutely adore Rocky 3. Like A Bronx Tale, these two films will always be my top 2 favorite films of all time. As I've been doing in my last few reviews, I'm going to start off by nerding out on some of the behind-the-scene antics that took place. So again, if you don't want to hear it, skip to this timestamp. I'll start off with the cliffhanger I created in my last review, and that's what happened to Stallone in the making of the film. Stallone wanted to make the box sequences as real as possible, where Stallone and Lundgren actually go at it through the first segment of their fight, as well as Withers and Lundgren as well. But as far as Stallone goes, as I've mentioned, he's always wanted the antagonist to hit him as hard as possible, so Lundgren obliged and put him in the hospital. He hit him so hard in the chest that his heart swelled up to his breastplate and was forced to go to the hospital, and he was kept in the ICU for 8 days. So I read anyways. Now, when it comes to Carl Weathers and Lundgren, Dolph was going so hard that Weathers, a familiar face in the franchise, threatened to walk off set because he was going too hard, throwing him to the turnbuckle, hitting him too hard, and all the rest of it. The thing is with Dolph Lundgren, he really wasn't a renowned actor at the time. I believe he had just one picture completed before this film, so he was still really green. He comes from a Kyokushin karate background, so he was a certified bad man, so he didn't really know how to exactly go easy on people. With that aside, another cool piece of information that carried over from the last film was Stallone's diet and training regimen. From what I read, his intake was nothing but straight tuna out of the can and black coffee. That's it. Maybe with just a touch of steroids as well, but that's neither here nor there, right? One of the other Easter eggs I found out about this movie was that Bridget Nielsen was Stallone's fiancée at the time, so that's how she got casted as Ivan Drago's wife. And the last nugget of information that I found, which I found really cool, especially from an inexperienced actor, was that Lundgren himself came up with the idea that his character should speak very minimally. Alright, with that nerd sesh out of the way, let's dive into the story of Rocky IV. Rocky IV, at its core, is another compelling revenge story that embodies the triumph of overcoming seemingly insurmountable odds, which is why it resonates with so many viewers. While it doesn't necessarily break down any barriers, maintaining a straightforward concept, it still possesses all the essential elements to create a solid film. Given the success of the previous 3 films, there was no need to reinvent the wheel here. Stallone wisely combined the strengths of Rocky III and elements from the first 2 films, crafting a stylized addition to the anthology series. Notably, it introduces new locations as the first 3 films were set in Philadelphia. This may disappoint some fans who believe the foundation of Rocky franchise was built on this premise, but it's commendable that the series strives to improve and doesn't really solely rely on the past success. For that, I give it credit. Like I've said in basically all my reviews, I've been the biggest Rocky fan since basically conception. I was born into it. I can confidently say that Rocky IV is often regarded as many people's favorite installment. It's no wonder, as it's undoubtedly the most enjoyable and action-packed film of the franchise. This is a pure 80s blast of fun, devoid of any unnecessary fat as well. While it may be a bit over the top, portraying Rocky as a modern-day Iron Man, if you will, who single-handedly saves the Cold War between the USA and Russia, I appreciate the film's attempt to delve into a more complex theme. While this film is loads of fun, it still hits a lot of good dramatic and emotional beats, especially with its message about change. It goes beyond the surface-level message of embracing change and explores the darker sides of politics, showing how it can poison our minds. Despite the political undertones, Rocky IV manages to strike a balance between entertainment and thought-provoking themes. It's a film that conveys positive message while maintaining its own unique personality, and this is precisely what films should strive for. This American-made film caters to its audience, but it also provides a fair representation of Russia. It highlights our stereotypical perception of them and emphasizes their desire for respect, as they are just like us. Additionally, it showcases their passion for the support of their athletes. Lastly, Rocky IV moves at a very rapid pace with minimal downtime, making it a fast-paced and engaging watch. There was a director's cut that came out a few years ago, which cleans up some questions that you may have had, but if you watch the theatrical version, you can certainly tell that things were cut out. When it comes to our characters, as always, they're all fantastic. Starting with Sly. He basically has this character down to a science at this point, where he seems to always find a way to give Rocky more layers and improve the approach they take while writing his character. To put it simply, Rocky in this film is undoubtedly smarter than he was in Rocky 2, but he has taken a step back from Rocky 3. He embodies a cool and composed middle ground between the two styles of characters, while still maintaining his charm and charisma. Apollo, on the other hand, remains that flamboyant yet likable character. In this film, it's not so much like Paulie living in Rocky's shadow, but Apollo wants to feel like he's still got it. He misses that fame that he once had, while he witnesses the fanfare that Rocky still has. Their bond is widely recognized, even though it's still relatively new to the franchise. However, they remain one of the best elements of the entire Rocky franchise. At this point, we all know Apollo's fate, but coming from a first-time viewing perspective, I thought they did a fantastic job subtly foreshadowing his demise through the first act of the film. They achieved this through clever dialogue and Apollo's actions. One of the new additions to the film is Duke, played by Tony Burton, who you may know from The Shining. In my opinion, he's an underrated character throughout the entire Rocky franchise. Naturally, he often remains in the background, but he plays a crucial role in Rocky's later success. Duke now fills Apollo's shoes, just as Apollo filled Mickey's shoes without overshadowing him. I thought they did another excellent job filling Burton into the Weathers role. Duke serves as a grounding aspect to Rocky's character, passing on his older, wiser knowledge. While it's not explicitly stated, you can sense that Duke is a great role model for Rocky. He's an exceptional trainer and the best, and I mean best hype man any fighter could ask for. As for our antagonist, Dolph Lundgren's portrayal as Ivan Drago is arguably the most formidable of Rocky's opponents. He's not just any opponent, he is the most deadly out of all of them. The first three Rocky films had already used this boastful, loud style of antagonist, so I appreciate how they switched things up and made him a silent killer. This makes him even scarier, especially considering his incredible skill set. Like Clubber Lang, his character isn't fully fleshed out, but he certainly has more depth to him. In fact, I would argue that he's the most expanded upon antagonist since Creed, and in some respects, maybe more so than Apollo. The way they write his character is almost WWE-esque, portraying him as a dangerous mountain of a man who doesn't speak for himself, but has others speak for him. The way his entourage speaks for him is so cold and so chilling. As for the script, I think it's one of the better ones. It certainly doesn't hold a candle to the first two installments, but I definitely found this to be a bit of an upgrade compared to the third installment. Not that the third was bad by any stretch. It's my favorite movie. However, there are so many iconic and memorable moments throughout the runtime, including some great, and I mean great pieces of dialogue between Rocky and Apollo, Rocky and Adrian, and even Rocky and his son. You could argue that in any of these scenes are the best of the film. I didn't really think the tones were as balanced as well as the third film, but this one was certainly balanced nonetheless. The first act or so was pretty lighthearted and fun, but after Apollo's fate, it turns to being very serious and even dark in some moments. To balance it all out, we had Paulie, who's arguably at his funniest in this film. He's always there to change the mood in either direction, while you still get your Rocky-isms from Rocky. When it comes to the training sequences, as you've noticed, I often say you could argue, because there are so many opinions out there. However, this time around, I believe it's fair to say the training sequences are the best of the entire Rocky franchise, along with the score and the soundtrack, which I'll discuss further in a minute. After that halfway point or so, the film transitions into a massive montage scene. It alternates between Rocky mourning Apollo and the actual training montages of Rocky, then back and forth between Rocky and Drago. They demonstrated this style in basically all of the films, but not to this extent. These montages were incredibly gritty, yet incredibly fun. Rocky returns to his traditional, old-school grindhouse style of training, chopping wood, chopping down trees, and running up snowy mountains. On the other hand, Drago had access to all the latest technology and equipment, along with steroids. When it comes to the boxing, outside of Rocky V's final fight, I believe this is probably the best fight of the franchise. I really appreciate Rocky 3 because of the new game plan and the adjustments Rocky made on the fly. However, this fight felt extremely real because, realistically, it was mostly real. They obviously weren't going at it to kill each other, but they were letting each other have it. And you could really tell they were going at it because of the minimal amount of post-production sound they added. Most of the noises you hear are actually the sounds of them hitting each other. In Rocky 1, you get the scene where Rocky gets dropped in round 14 and Apollo starts to celebrate, but Rocky gets back up. In Rocky 2, there's the final 10-second scene where they both fall. In Rocky 3, you see him taking a proper beating in round 2. But this fight, above all, really shows Rocky's heart and determination. He's not only fighting a giant, but he's also fighting a non-sanctioned bout. When you call it a spade, Drago is essentially cheating throughout a lot of the fight by taking steroids, throwing him around, physically lifting him up, and hitting him after the bell. This fight evokes a cluster of emotions in me, even after seeing it countless times. The anticipation and emotions I felt during my first viewing are still palpable, as if I'm still on the edge of my seat, unsure of what's to come. While I'm on the topic of emotions, Rocky's final speech at the end of the fight brings all the feels Rocky 2 did, and what's even more fascinating about that, supposedly, this was all improvised on the spot. Lastly, the film's soundtrack and score is simply amazing. As I mentioned earlier, the training and boxing scenes are a testament to the film's brilliance. While some may argue that it feels like a music video due to the montages, the music is undeniably exceptional. You got songs like Burning Hot, I Live in America, No Easy Way Out, which is my personal favorite, and Hearts on Fire, and they're all must-hears. It's a shame that Bill Conti didn't compose the music this time around, as he's such a legend and a legendary talent. However, Vince DiCola's ability to create such a diverse and captivating scores and soundtracks is truly remarkable. Now, unlike the first three films, I certainly have more drawbacks. For starters, unfortunately, and admittedly, this is where the franchise starts to decline in quality. It is a bit silly if we're being honest. Do I care? Not really, but as a critic, it certainly needs to be mentioned. Although different in some aspects, it almost feels like a remake of Rocky 3. Rocky loses another close loved one and has to get revenge, along with the tone shifts that occur. It sometimes feels a bit lazy, and even Sly said himself that he regrets killing off Creed. But to be fair, it worked out for the better because of the spin-off trilogy that we got in Creed. Now, that's not to say his death wasn't moving. I was shook when I was a kid, like when he twitched. That bugged me out. But I didn't feel as emotionally attached as I did to Mickey. As mentioned, I still tear up to this day when Mickey hits the "it hurts" blah. My next issue is with the pacing. I'm all for fast-paced films because sometimes slower-paced or 3+ hour long films can be tough for me to get through. This film just flies by. Because of the amount of cuts and fast pace, it runs into quite a few plot holes. For example, who watched Rocky's son when Adrian left? The robot? Give me a break. There's also no build-up for Rocky and Drago. Apollo dies, and the next frame is Rocky and Drago at the press conference. You could tell there was a big cut made there. Another example is, how does Drago go from being an amateur to killing the former, arguably best heavyweight of all time regardless of how old Apollo is? There's no background on who he was fighting or how good he actually was. I mean, I guess we get that answer after the fight though, so I guess it makes sense. All I'm going to say is, thank God for the director's cut that came out because it certainly patches up some of these holes and expands on Apollo's motivations, which feel rather thin in the theatrical cut. My next issue comes from the many montages. This personally doesn't bother me much, but it does feel somewhat lazy because it rushes by, leaving certain events and characters underdeveloped. And my last minor issue is that Adrian, once again, is underutilized in this film, even more so than Rocky 3. Again, in the director's cut, she has more to do, but in the theatrical version, she doesn't really do a whole lot. Apart from the stair scene and her brief visit to Russia to talk to Rocky for 25 seconds, she essentially does nothing. While her role as the driving force behind Rocky's journey is still effectively portrayed, I personally would have liked to see her more. Overall, Rocky IV is still a good film, and even a very good film. Critically, I do think it's the weakest of the first 4 films, but it doesn't stick out like a sore thumb, mainly because it's a lot of people's favorite. This isn't going to be a direct defense piece for the film, although it may come across that way. I have numerous jarring issues with the film, but I will say with my chest out that it's not as bad as everyone makes it out to be. Rocky V certainly receives a lot of understandable criticisms, but I feel many people speak with ill-advised emotion when discussing this film. I can't speak for everyone, of course, but I generally don't know what everyone expected. Many people wanted another larger and more formidable Rocky film if I had to guess, which the franchise has already consistently delivered. However, Rocky's peak came after Rocky IV, let's just be honest. You really can't get any bigger than that, so Sly's decision to return to the roots of the franchise, going back to the slums of Philly with Rocky and Adrian doing the same jobs, Rocky revitalizing that beloved character style from Rocky 1, all things that made Rocky 1 great, was a wise choice in my book. Personally, I'm all ears. Usually my comment sections are completely dead, but I would love to hear a coherent idea of how Rocky V could have surpassed any other Rocky film, because the franchise essentially accomplished everything that it could have. I feel that the biggest drawback for Rocky 3 and Rocky 4 was that they lacked that groundedness feel that Rocky 1 and Rocky 2 had. So, Sly tried to appease to the fans and return to the franchise's roots, but people still found an issue after spending a few films pleading for that style to return. He was essentially trapped in a no-win situation. Realistically, in any franchise ever created, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, the 4th and 5th films usually face a decline and feel exhausted. So in fairness, he was fighting an uphill battle the whole time. However, I still believe this film delivered. With that aside, Rocky V is essentially a horror movie. We were forced to witness our beloved protagonist, who had done nothing but great things for 4 films, earning every bit of his success through blood, sweat, and tears, be stripped down to his bare essentials in just an hour and 40 minutes. While, to me, this is an extremely difficult watch, it still breathes new life into the franchise and it sets it apart from the other installments. The first 4 Rocky films are relatively straightforward with a focused plot. However, Rocky V introduces several subplots to add depth and complexity to the narrative. These subplots include Rocky's brain damage, his financial struggles, his relationship with his son and Adrian, Tommy's character, and the lingering grief from the previous two films. Despite the numerous subplots, the creative team effectively balances and integrates them into the overall story. For instance, while some subplots such as Rocky's brain damage, which is not extensively explored due to his inactive boxing career, feels less developed, they are still seamlessly woven into the arc of Tommy Gunn. On another note, to me, the heartbeat of this film lies between the relationship between Rocky and his son, which creates one of the most compelling father-son dynamics I've honestly witnessed in cinema. I'll delve deeper into that in a minute. The film's tone is somewhat scattered due to the numerous moving parts, but it ultimately achieves a profound emotional impact by addressing and resolving several grounding aspects. The narrative is consistently evolving while the plots are meticulously woven together. As for the characters, I believe we get some of the best character moments from Rocky himself as well as from Adrian. Personally, I feel as if Adrian got sidelined in Rocky 3 and even Rocky 4, but more so in Rocky 4 if I'm honest. But she has a significant role in this film and shines brightly. She's always been the worried wife since Rocky 1, but her concerns about her son and her husband are amplified in this film, creating a heartwarming family-centered tone. I think Rocky and Adrian's relationship reached its peak in this film, with many emotional beats created through their enduring bond and family dynamics. As well as that, this film reaches great emotional heights within the Tommy plotline because of Rocky's investment in him, as well as Rocky losing everything including his health, having just as much investment into everything as Tommy does, on top of the turmoil between Rocky and his son. Now that beautifully leads me into talking about Sage Stallone as Robert, or Rocky Jr., whatever you prefer. As I mentioned earlier, Rocky and Robert's relationship is the heart of this film. Perhaps it's because I enjoyed watching this film with my dad so much, but their relationship was truly beautiful and felt authentic. They face real-world challenges to put them in uncomfortable positions, ultimately leading to a dramatic downfall as well as an uplifting resolution. While there has been scenes in the older Rocky films where Rocky is a dad, it wasn't nearly as prominent as it is in this film. In my humble opinion, although Sage Stallone may not be the most seasoned actor, their moments together are some of the best scenes in the film. Perhaps it's because it was his actual son, but their chemistry felt incredibly real and believable, making me fully invested in their relationship. Although they didn't plan on making Rocky 6 or Rocky Balboa, whatever you guys call it, I call it Rocky 6, see if I care. Their relationship in this film pays off extremely well, as their bond is significantly impacted in the next film. As for Sylvester Stallone as Rocky, as mentioned earlier, he fits back into the original Rocky character role exceptionally well. I mean, I guess you could argue that the plot holes arise from him being almost intelligent in the last two installments, and now he's back to being a coconut, but it all makes sense. Not just because he moves back to his old neighborhood, but also because of the brain trauma he's faced. He effortlessly and seamlessly fits back into that old role like an old glove, having all the Rockyisms we all know and love. I personally believe this should satisfy the crowd that's been yearning for that style of his character to return. I genuinely don't know how Sly does it, but he somehow manages to give this character more layers as these films progress. In this film, we see Rocky losing himself as a person, then seemingly finding himself through Tommy, but in reality, he's just slipping deeper and deeper into the abyss, only to find himself through the turmoil and come to the realization of what things are. Although it can be frustrating to witness him disregard apparent signs, this version of the Rocky character is arguably my favorite. There are so many moving scenes of Rocky being depressed and lost without boxing, as well as missing Mickey and Apollo while questioning what all this is for. Personally, I enjoyed seeing Rocky embody that Mickey mold, if you will, adopting that trainer's mentality. After all, what more could you really ask for? Do you genuinely desire to witness a middle-aged man re-enter the ring with a young and hungry boxer? I feel that if they were to do so, it would simply feel redundant. To be fair, you could argue that the theme of certain characters adopting that Mickey mold can be repetitive. It makes the most sense for Rocky to follow in his footsteps after his professional career concludes. Additionally, the introduction and development of Tommy was commendable. In some respects, Tommy resembles Rocky in the past. He's a broke, aspiring boxer fighting in clubs for chump change, then finding a bit of glory with a wise coach, only to gradually lose himself due to the fame and fortune, similar to Rocky's early acts in Rocky 3. Tommy Morrison, rest in peace, like Sage Stallone, may not be the greatest actor given he was a professional boxer by trade, but he was still a pretty solid character. While he's not considered a top antagonist, in my opinion, he stands out as the most colorful of Rocky's adversaries. He embodies the expectations of Drago, attempting to make him a sympathetic antagonist by evoking empathy for his struggles during his ascent, and for me, this approach was effective. Lastly, Richard Grant's portrayal as George Washington Duke was exceptional. While the similarities to Don King are evident, Duke's character thrives due to these comparisons. Outside of Drago's trainer, we haven't really encountered many outside-the-ring antagonists, and Duke truly shines in that role. Not only did he possess the ability to sell a fight, but he also had a knack for getting underneath Rocky's skin, enabling him to achieve his objectives. I was pleasantly surprised by the amount of screen time he received, and honestly, without him, this movie would have felt incomplete. Regarding the fight, I may not consider it the best one, if you will, but undoubtedly it holds a special spot in my heart. It is unique and stylish in its own way, while also increasing the stakes with the inherent risks involved. This fight was very brutal and quite graphic, given that it was a street fight rather than a sanctioned boxing match. Considering Rocky's brain trauma, the stakes were even higher because they're of course not wearing boxing gloves and they were fighting on the pavement amongst other factors. When it comes to my reservations about this film, I do have several. My first issue stems from the hypocrisy the film loosely establishes. From Rocky 1 and on, the film has been about progress and improvement. The film essentially took what was good about the first Rocky, like the direction, having Sly write the film, and getting back to the streets of Philadelphia, but it almost feels like a mere carbon copy of the first Rocky, executed cheaply and lacking the effort though. It sort of contradicts the film's stated intentions to innovate and do something different. My second, and perhaps the most significant issue, is the numerous plot holes in this film. For instance, when Rocky leaves for Russia in Rocky 4, his son is around, 7, 8, maybe 9 at best. However, when he returns, his son is roughly, 12, 13, 14, but he was only gone for a few months. How does that make sense? Another glaring inconsistency is the change of Rocky's residence. He lives in this luxurious mansion that resembles the White House, but upon his return, he lives in a completely different house. Nice looking house, but completely different. Additionally, the film establishes that Rocky's medical records are strictly confidential. Emphasize, strictly. Yet Duke is able to access them. If they hadn't explicitly stated this, it would have been easy to overlook, but they went out of their way to emphasize that no one would know. Maybe it was a ploy to show how snake-like Duke can be, but it didn't help with the cohesion of the film. The last plot hole I have is, how did Paulie obtain the right to sign power of attorney over Rocky is simply nonsensical. It seems like an attempt to continue the theme of Paulie being a nuisance, but it doesn't make any logical sense and is only there to advance the plot. Speaking of plot devices, another minor issue I had was with Uni Kane feeling like a mere puppet. He does virtually nothing in this film and is only there to boost Tommy Gunn. Which, again, maybe that was the purpose, but if they took him out, nothing about the film would change. Moving on to the writing. I honestly have to admit, the writing in this film is some of my favorite. I know, it's kind of a guilty pleasure. It delivers a good mix of laughs and emotional moments. However, there are several instances where seemingly added on pieces of dialogue disrupt certain scenes. For instance, during a conversation between Robert and his girlfriend, they had a grounded and decent exchange. However, she suddenly says, for an Italian kid, you don't got a bad butt. Like, what? Where did that come from? To delve deeper into this issue, there are a few scenes where the actors, both in and out of focus, either over or underact. Some scenes feel overly dramatic, while others appear to have been shot with the incorrect camera angle or just the wrong direction from the director. When the characters are not speaking, they often stand there and they look lost. They're either like this or they're like... And it just disrupts the whole flow of the scene. My final concern relates to the technical aspects, particularly the editing. For example, there are instances where the tacked-on dialogue is very jarring. In one scene, the shot is taken from behind the person speaking just off to the side a little bit so you can see like a side profile a bit, but the actor stops talking and the mouths are still moving and they're still getting animated. Additionally, some of the scene's transitions and sharp edits feel out of place with the overall tone and style of this film. Overall, with that aside, I absolutely adore Rocky V, and I will always be its #1 defender. I honestly don't even think it's the weakest in the Rocky franchise. I think it's Rocky 6, and we'll talk about that in the next video. When it comes to the story, this feels like the most like the original Rocky amongst all the other films in the franchise. Sly fulfills that original style of the character very well, with it naturally being his baby, where it seems like he can switch it on and off like a radio. This film is steeped in nostalgia, which may be a downside for some, or an upside, and I tend to agree that it's more on the downside. However, it is important to note that this film is unique and distinct from the first one, maintaining its own identity. The opening act is essentially a tribute to the best moments of the first installment, which can be seen as nostalgia bait. I was all for it because it immediately got the emotions pumping and set the tone for the rest of the film effectively. As you can imagine, this film explores similar themes to the previous installments, such as go for it, testing oneself, and believing in oneself. However, it also incorporates a grounding tone that addresses the reality of the past and the present, which weighs heavily on every character involved. If the franchise had ended with Rocky V, I personally wouldn't have been upset. I am what seems to be the only Rocky V fan on the planet. Nevertheless, Rocky Balboa is a true capstone to the franchise, representing Sly's desire to go out on his own terms, which is a reoccurring theme in these films. When it comes to the characters, like the first film, this movie primarily focuses on the character development, which contributes significantly to the success. Rocky Balboa centers around the characters and their interactions, featuring numerous heartwarming moments between all the characters involved, particularly between Rocky and his son, Rocky and Paulie, and Rocky and Little Marie. The creators effectively portray each character's motives and emotions, from Robert's insecurities and remorse towards his father, including the loss of his mother as well, to Paulie's grief over the loss of his sister and his struggle with the harsh realities of his past actions. Little Marie faces challenging times at home and with her work. Mason Dixon, the antagonist, feels disrespected, similar to how Apollo Creed was, while Rocky grapples with various issues of a midlife crisis. Despite their individual challenges, some live alone while others share similar feelings. However, by the final 5 minutes of the film, all their troubles are resolved, providing a truly satisfying conclusion to not only this movie, but also the entire franchise. As for individual characters, Stallone returns to his iconic persona from the first film, beloved by many for his sympathetic nature and his infectious energy. In this film, he's depicted as a kind-hearted old man at the end of the day, who simply feeds the birds and visits his deceased wife every morning, despite receiving considerable love and attention from the community. However, beneath his outward appearance lies a complex internal struggle with his feelings and unfulfillment, the pain of losing loved ones, and other personal challenges. As many people may know from my past reviews, or maybe even their own research, Sly wanted to add several other elements to his films but never really get the chance to do so for whatever reason. For instance, Rocky attempted to attain a license in Rocky IV after Apollo's death, and there was a plain voiceover when he was knocked down in the same film. However, in this film, it seemed that Stallone had complete creative control and skillfully incorporated these additions. This only makes the send-off even sweeter for me. This film also closely mirrors struggles that Stallone faced in the 1990s. He had achieved tremendous success in the 80s, mainly because of Rocky, but nearly became irrelevant in the 1990s. Studios refused to grant him permission to make this film, as he'd been trying to get it off the ground since the late 1990s. Therefore, the courtroom scene in this film was an excellent addition and almost an unwritten love letter to himself. The next character that I didn't think would be brought back to this franchise, but I was glad that she did, was Little Marie. She was a mere plot device in the first film to enhance Rocky's character, but in this film, she becomes a much more prominent character. With the absence of Adrian, she inadvertently fills the void for Rocky, and their bond is nothing short of sweet. I am extremely grateful they made their relationship platonic. If they had gone the other way, it could have single-handedly ruined the film for me. It would have essentially trashed the Adrian character and made it feel flat-out weird, to be blunt. While Milo Ventimiglia, I definitely butchered that name, you know who I'm talking about, his son, the kid from Grown Ups too. Anyways, his performance in this film wasn't really the best, but I still can appreciate it nonetheless. It loosely references Rocky V, further justifying his significance in that film. Their bond was okay, with Sly undoubtedly carrying the load, but it ultimately pays off well in the final act when Robert hits his character arc. In my humble opinion, Paulie is at his best in Rocky Balboa. He is still a bit of a jerk-off, but he's significantly improved. We now witness a range of positive emotions from him, reflecting his profound emotional turmoil after losing his sister and feeling like a failure at life. This newfound vulnerability explains Rocky's constant closeness to him. One aspect that could have further enhanced this movie is if they begun with Adrian's death. They briefly tell us what happened, and we have to go with it, which is fine. However, incorporating this layer of Rocky's loss within the film would have added depth to the tone, intensifying the drama, and made this narrative more purposeful. As far as the script goes, while I've shed many tears from Rocky II all the way through Rocky V, this is arguably the saddest film of the franchise. It delves into death and despair with powerful, heartfelt moments and triumph sequences. However, the overall tone is rather glum, enhanced by the dark color grading and the occasional all-blue color scheme. Despite this somber tone, there are still plenty of laughs, primarily from Rocky and the signature Rocky-isms, as well as Paulie's own share of humor as well. The subtle comedic elements are expertly woven into the glum atmosphere, so it does work pretty well. The editing, and more importantly, the camera work are truly exceptional in this film, elevating it alongside the character development. It's evident that Stallone is comfortable and way more competent behind the camera, showcasing a significant improvement from the previous 3 installments. While I adore the fighting sequences in the last 3 installments, this one feels more authentic. Granted, Stallone and Lundgren go at it in Rocky IV for a good portion of their scrap. It almost feels like the entire sequence of Stallone and Tava was all real. I'm gonna be honest, it did seem like Antonio Tava was pulling his punches where some of his 1-2s looked like mere slaps. But mostly, it didn't seem like they were pulling many punches, and that's extremely commendable for Sly at his age. While this fight may not be my personal favorite, it's unique and stylish in its own way, being very reminiscent of a real WBC or WBO world title boxing match. The cinematography and color scheme further enhance this experience. They do quick flashbacks to reveal Rocky's past injuries, while short black and white segments incorporate pops of color from their blood or the color on their shorts. The visual style is pretty well executed. Now, although this film is still good, and honestly maybe even great to the hardcore Rocky fans, I must admit that it's arguably the most flawed film. For starters, and this is a direct response to the critics of Rocky V, I can't help but wonder if this is what you truly wanted to see. An old man trading blows with a young, hungry, and undefeated boxer. I just wasn't too keen on it. My first major issue is that the film takes itself way too serious at times, as if it was on track for another Oscar, which it wasn't even close to. Personally, I believe a significant part of the first film's success was the ability to strike a balance between seriousness and humor. However, this one feels like it's trying to be better than it actually was. Another major issue is that the film naturally repeats its steps from Rocky 1, including some of Rocky's dilemmas, as well as approach to Mason Dixon's character. While this doesn't feel lazy, it doesn't offer anything new or exciting either. It is packed with fan service, and I appreciated that, although it could be looked at as a negative, but it doesn't really feel fresh or innovative. If you watch it once, mainly when it first came out, it'll likely work. However, this film has the least rewatchability to any of the films in the series. Another big issue is with some of the plot holes and past ideas they created in prior films. In Rocky V, Adrian didn't want Rocky to box due to his brain damage, but that never comes up in this film. The only reason he's held back is because of his age. While those two factors may correlate in a way, they don't even hint at the brain damage aspect. Furthermore, the whole plot point of Rocky being retired has been relevant since Rocky 3. Here we are, 3 movies later, and he's still retired but trying to box. It's like beating a dead horse at this point. Speaking of silly plot points, the concept of a computer trial bringing Rocky out of retirement is simply absurd. I honestly couldn't think of a better idea to get him out of retirement myself, but that's simply the point. Why do it? My next issue is with the pacing. This film naturally flies by, which is a good thing, but it does feel rushed at times. They definitely could have added another 20 or so minutes to the runtime to flesh out Mason Dixon, Paulie, Robert, and other characters as well. However, some plots and characters get left underdeveloped a bit as well. My next issue comes from Antonio Tarver. He is a world-class boxer. I mean, he beat Roy Jones twice, but he's not a good actor. He's by far the worst acted antagonist in the Rocky series. I thought it was smart to keep his lines minimal because he basically sleptwalked through them all. On top of that, as mentioned earlier, his motives are noticeable but completely undersold. He wants respect because people think he's handpicking easy opponents, so they decide to take a nearly 6-year-old man out of retirement to move the needle. That would never work in film or real life. Overall, I have other small issues, like with Little Marie's son being atrocious, but at the end of the day, this is still a good send-off for the Rocky franchise. And there you have it. As you can tell, there are a few films towards the middle and even towards the end of the franchise that don't really hold up to the beginning films, but as a whole, it's still a quite consistent franchise, and again, my favorite of all time.